How you doing? It is I, Coach Clay Banks, back with you with another episode of PZTV, Performance Zone Television, where I sit down with interesting people, thought leaders, and industry professionals and unpack their minds to find out things like tricks, habits, tips, techniques, insights, and understandings so that they can reveal what they know to help you navigate your life and your path that much even more better and more powerful. Today, I have a very special guest with me, a recurring guest, Mr. Kevin E. West. And Kevin is a long-term veteran film and television actor, industry professional. He writes books, he talks. Kevin is the founder of TAN, the Actors Network, one of the oldest, most established actors networking operation and organizations there is. And he's also a SAG-AFTRA union delegate. And we are going to meet Kevin right now and unfold all kind of things about what is happening with the state of the union now during the pandemic, what's going on with pilot season, and our industry overall. So without any further ado, Kevin, I welcome you once again to PZTV.
Thanks for having me, Coach Clay.
Hey, how you doing?
That's a toughie for me. I like that. I'll call you Coach Clay, though. Everybody else does. That's cool.
Oh, that's all right. You can call me whatever you
I
like.
just call you CB, but I'll go with Coach Clay.
But we've known each other a while. We started as actors and moved up, and you've lived your life, I've lived mine, and it's re-intersected. We've come back around together as professionals in the industry, and it's been great. Kevin, I do want to thank you for coming in because it's always a pleasure to talk with you. Your brain is an encyclopedia of lexiconology of this industry, and it's fascinating.
I'm old, so I've been here a long time. So.
But let's go ahead and crack this thing open, and why don't you just give the viewers who haven't had a chance to meet you yet just a little bit of an insight on yourself.
I'm from rural Tennessee, a very rural part of Tennessee. I started my career actually in Atlanta long before Atlanta is what it is today. Going all the way back to then, I still had put out a game plan of what I was going to do in Atlanta for 2 years, and I had a 2-year plan, and I basically left. It was either 3 days before or 3 days after the 2-year deadline, and I had every single thing that I had planned to do. I came out here. I was a stand-up comic and an improv artist, so it's a former stand-up comic, so it's only going to be medium funny today. Let's not have too much expectation on the funny. And then I wound up auditioning for and booking my first guest star on Matlock, and ironically, most of the rest of my career has been episodic drama television, all the way up into right at the moment the pandemic hit. I was in South Carolina shooting a couple episodes of The Righteous Gemstones for HBO, playing a medium abusive religious father. Shocking. And along the way through all of that, of course, I did found the Actors Network, a business networking organization, not a workshop company that won awards, was highly notable along the way, and had about 5,000 members across the course of almost 24 years, from May 1st, 91 to June 30th, 2013, when we closed the physical doors.
All right.
So that's a little bit on me.
Yeah. So I know you've done quite a bit, and TAN is how I met you, and I just thought that was a fantastic organization and I know it's a passion for you as well. Let's just jump into that just for a quick minute before we move into the other topics on why TAN is so, because we've talked, I know, but why is TAN such a passion project for you?
Like anything, Clay, when you get to a certain age, which are not the ladies that are in the room, you can probably look back at your life and you can see what your life resume shows you have done and what you have chosen to put your time into. And we don't often recognize it when we're younger because we just simply don't. But I'm a Pisces, and I am, aside from being an artist, I am also somebody who grew up having to work very hard. I grew up in a single-parent home, and I'm just naturally a very feeling person. And I got asked a lot, like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years into the Actors Network, why did you start the Actors Network? And at the time, it seemed like an easy answer. It's even an easier answer today. And that is because when you choose to take your acting art and shift it to wanting to make money at it, I believe you have crossed a Rubicon, because you can be an actor anywhere. You can just do stage and love it and be an artist and, buy a house in a city where you can buy the whole house for a certain amount of money as opposed to just the bathroom in Los Angeles. So that should have been way funnier. See what I'm talking about?
It's too poignantly true.
I
Is
know.
the problem, I think.
So when I got asked a lot, I said what I saw for the first 4 years in LA was, I don't necessarily want to say the word unnecessary, but I saw a lot of pain and I saw a lot of consternation amongst my fellow peers as it related to trying to pursue the business of show business. And I don't mean that in the light, simple way we all call the business. I meant the deep way that I have taken it on over the years in terms of being a real niche of expertise and how you attack it. And so I just woke up one night, rolled over, picked up a pad, started writing a bunch of stuff down. And sadly for me, when I commit to something, I commit to it. And the organization went from 7 people in my house on a couch having a conversation, all fully clothed, to an organization that won awards and did have a real effect on Hollywood, along with all of the people who passed through who were terrifically successful. We certainly, as an organization, had a higher percentage of success than what the general percentages of the industry are, but it's because I simply didn't want us to have this be any harder or more painful than it needed to be. That's ultimately the answer.
Now, you've had a pretty successful career in television. I mean, you work in TV all the time, and obviously we're at time of taping. And also, if you're watching this at time of taping, you might be wondering why the green background. Okay, well, put it together. It's a green screen, so when we actually do repost this, it will have our logo and all kind of other fun stuff up there. But for right now, you guys are seeing it in the raw, if you were wondering.
And I have green eyes, which means the whole background's just become my eyes
Boom.
when we do this. So there you go. It's really
there
creepy.
It is, right. I'm glad you didn't wear your green jumpsuit. There'd be a head bouncing around.
It'd be weird.
With no eyes, But now, right now, what's going on with the pandemic? Because I remember at the beginning of this, you came in and you were just going to Hawaii to shoot something. It was right before the pandemic.
Yeah,
It was right before the pandemic. You were going to Hawaii to shoot Hawaii Five-0.
Correct.
Okay. What's going on now in your professional experience with television and the pandemic? What's happening?
Well, not a lot happened, obviously, in March, April, and May.
Right.
I mean, and the ironic part is during that period of time, our contract actually came up, and I was actually on the theatrical negotiating committee, so I was part of a 80 to 150 person Zoom for 7 weeks to negotiate a contract during a time in which no one was working. So it was a real paradox to be having a conversation about negotiation terms when basically the entire industry was shut down.
End times. What are we doing?
Yeah, end times, exactly. And then, we created the Safe Way Forward document as a union, which IATSE and the Writers Guild and the Director Guild signed on to. And then eventually that evolved. Once we got into July and we started getting later into the summer, it was apparent that we were all going to try on some level to go back to work, because I have a couple of friends that are showrunners and their shows were going to start on like July 15th and then it got pushed to the 22nd. And finally, some of those shows started going back to work in early August under really strict guidelines. And then that document even got changed again to the document we now all use, which is also inclusive of signed on by the Producers Guild and the JPC, the Joint Policy Committee, which governs commercials, and also the AICP, that everybody's on the same page, called Return to Work. And that is the governing COVID testing document which runs all union shoots across this country. And that's where we are today. And the truth of the matter is, Clay, when we talk in general about Hollywood, you have all of the static shows. And of course, television is much more proliferated these days than feature films and studio films. But that's the problem, is you have routines of shows, but then you have commercials over here and some streaming shows doing stuff over there. And there's not one through line. And what's been discovered is, along with the whole COVID compliance officer joke certification, which also occurred in July, August, September, October, where you'd have one set where a COVID compliance officer was doing a great job and another set where the COVID compliance officer was sitting in their car sleeping. I mean, again, not a lot of, through line routine in that. And that's been the case. But the truth of the matter is, some shows do it right and some productions don't. And there just simply are not enough resources to try and contain it all. And that's one of the reasons why in the last 4 or 5 months you've seen a handful of sets and a handful of shows get shut down. Whereas I know a couple of actual ongoing series where they're testing 100 to 150 people a week for the last 5 months, and they've had 2 positive cases. Because, you as an employee, you either decide you want a paycheck or you don't. You decide you want to be responsible when you go home over the weekend or you don't. That's no different than you, myself, the 3 people sitting in this room. How do you live your life? And that's just, it's hard for Americans, and it's certainly hard for Hollywood to adjust to that. And it took a good 6 months from March 15th to just before Thanksgiving for people to go, oh, yeah, this whole COVID thing. That's kind of important we pay attention to that in pre-production if we want to actually get back to work. And so now, 2 months later, literally almost to January 15th, Hollywood understands it pretty well as we start benching and bridging into pilot season, or what we think is pilot season. I'm hoping, Clay, I mentioned it to you the other day, I'm hoping that by the end of February, maybe towards the end of March, that we are 70% back to production. We got about as high as 44.
Where are we? We're in the 40s right now?
Well, we just went through a shutdown. I mean, we just went through a mandatory...
Isn't that over?
Ish. Ish. I like to use ish a lot because, I don't know all that's going on. Right. But it basically got tossed out to everybody right around the 8th, right after we crossed New Year's. And again, we saw this across the country. Everybody went, oh, it's 2021. 2020's over. Yeah, but the pandemic's not over. Oh, but we have a vaccine coming. Yes, but it's not really here yet. So we still had such a surge in cases that they said 2 weeks. Well, guess what today is? January 22nd. So technically, come Monday, and it's not a Jimmy Buffett song, I think you're going to see, again, should have been way funnier.
Well, that actually was pretty good.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Nabila sort of laughed a little bit. And I'm more excited that she knows who Jimmy Buffett is.
You got to know who Jimmy Buffett is.
I'm more excited about that. But I think since you know that I'm involved from a COVID PCR management testing standpoint as well, I think come Monday you're going to start to see Hollywood get back to work in a hurry.
Now, I've got a close associate who works in Atlanta, and he's working all the time as an on-set coach, and is also directs for Tyler Perry Studios as well. And he actually had to leave here for the rest of the year because there's so much work going on in Atlanta right now that he can't do his operation here. And he called me from set a couple of days ago, and he says, "Clay, it's ridiculous. I am in a full hazmat suit. Every 18 feet, there's a cleansing station. The star has to change her clothes and her outfit like 100 times a day. I mean, all these rules that are going on, but it's busy over there. Yeah. They're not locked down the same way."
Well, first and foremost, it's the South where I'm from. So no, they don't, as general cultural or percentage-wise, they view, and citizenry-wise, they viewed COVID a little bit differently than us, but it's also a right-to-work state. And also Tyler Perry, from the word go, they have built a little bit more of a bubble, even though we both know that the bubble didn't work perfectly in the NBA, although they did a really good job. It didn't work perfectly and hasn't worked perfectly in the NFL, even though I have close ties to people involved at the management and the NFL Players Association level of the NFL, and they've tried very hard, but it is what it is, man. It's a really contagious disease. And you can't afford, like the movie Outbreak, you can't afford to have one person who's asymptomatic on your set, because that's on a Friday and you come back on Monday and 80% of your set is sick and you have to shut down. So the hazmat metaphor and literal has some validity to it.
Now, where is the power structure in this? Let me just kind of flesh this out. Of course, there's the union, and if you're union contracted, then you obviously are under union guidelines and what the union says. And they have the white paper. I think it was.
Well, now it's just called Return to Work. That's just It's okay. It's several pages long, and the first 7 pages are the most. And
important. If you're going to do a union job, you have to abide by that, or you're not working, and that's that. Now, if you're not union, who's overseeing it outside of the state?
No, it would actually be even the county health department.
The county health department.
Yeah, LA County Health Department would be your guiding light in this city.
And they can shut you down.
Absolutely, they can.
Okay, so that's what's in place.
Because there's 3 elements. There's cleanliness, like you just described 2 of them. The only one you left out was the testing part. Set cleanliness, set PPE, and employment testing. Those are the 3 elements that make up getting shut down by anyone. Those three things.
Okay. And that's all got to be in place. Now, if everybody is putting that in place and there isn't a lockdown, what's to keep everything from opening up?
Nothing. And then people will be shut down slowly here and there by irresponsible people.
Well,
But
yeah,
I do believe, and again, we chatted about this, Clay. At this point, I don't believe once we get past this particular quote unquote hypersensitive moment of the surge with the vaccine, I don't believe once Hollywood starts to open back up again, I don't believe any sporadic here and there stories or this is just my opinion. Any sporadic shutdowns is going to slow down Hollywood any further at this point. I believe that the genie is out of the bottle in the sense of we've now taken 8 months, and I'm talking about the top 2% of Hollywood, the studios and the showrunners and the VP of legal affairs at networks and the people that have money. We all understand how we're supposed to do this, and we are going to do it right. And if Billy over there and so over there screws it up, not our problem. We're not shutting down. I believe that's where we're headed come Monday.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at all the consumption that went on. What did everybody in the world do this whole past 2020? Everybody sat home and emptied their Amazon and their Netflix accounts. And Netflix, as you might be aware, just committed to doing 52 movies, one movie a week all year for 2020. That's a lot of programming that they've got to do. That's a lot of producing and a lot of sets that are opening and actors that are working.
And that's just the movies.
Just the movies,
not the documentaries, not the streaming
and
high
the
budget
TV shows.
SVOD, yeah,
right. So all that's got to come, and all the other platforms and new platforms are opening. You know, IMDb has a platform now. Of course, Apple opened their platform. I mean, there's content everywhere.
Right. Or as we call it at SAG-AFTRA, we call it Fangy plus D.
You're gonna have to explain that.
Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix,
and Disney.
Google, YouTube, and put all of the icons on the backdrop like this of a big Mickey Mouse head. It's Fangy plus Disney.
Note to editor, let's do that.
Yeah, Fangy plus Disney. Because Disney has now bought Fox 21 and Fox 2000. It's ABC Signature and it's ABC Family versus ABC Network. Aside from ESPN, I mean, Disney is what they are. And so you have the confusion when it comes to even where we're at, and when you talk about Netflix and what they've committed to, they're still, even though they're doing movies, you know, movies are not a television show. They're mutually exclusive individual pods.
Right.
The struggle with COVID and the struggle with pilot season for the networks, for CBS, Sony, CW, or ABC or NBC, or even, you know, what's left of Fox Network, those things require ongoing building, staffing. They have much more of a structure than someone like a Netflix. And then you have Hulu that's on both sides of things in terms of, you know, what kind of content they get, and or Apple and Amazon and Facebook, or they can do stuff whenever they want. The idea of pilot season for them is very different than the idea of pilot season for network television.
It's always going.
Yes, and so those entities are they're able to be much more fluid and much more flexible, even though, you know, listen, don't think that for 1 second COVID has not affected 80 to 90% of those entities as well. But I'm just saying, going forward, come Monday, I think that you're going to see Hollywood's metaphor of the running with the bulls. I think, again, that should be really funny. But probably not. He didn't laugh at all. I do think that it's going to be a bit of an explosion.
Well, the reason I didn't laugh is I want to know, my brain is going, well, what is so significant about Monday?
2 weeks after they had the shutdown.
So it's 2 weeks after.
I'm just saying it's the Monday post 2 weeks of January 8th to January 22nd. That's all. Sorry.
Now I get the joke.
Yes, that's all.
Okay.
And that's why I said the genie out of the bottle, because we all got panicked when so-and-so's film got shut down. We got panicked when Michael Bay had to shut his film down. We got panicked when somebody got shut down in Atlanta. We got panicked when The Bold and Beautiful right off the bat got shut down. Those were all months ago. A lot has happened since then. A lot of productions have happened since then. A lot of smarter testing, smarter CCOs. Now they're being harder on the COVID compliance officers and the health and safety supervisors in terms of actually doing a real job, because I have several friends, many actors got involved in that, you know, during the downtime as a way to supplement their income because of the town being shut down. And so now we're just simply in a place where we've raised the bar, not only from a production side of how much people take it seriously. I mean, when I first started in doing the COVID test sales and learning about all this, I mean, productions were still treating this like it was going to pick up, 24 muffins at Costco. I'm like, no, you're going to have to move this way up the priority list of pre-production. It took them a long time, but most everybody is there now that I talk to. They get the fact that this is this is in the top 3 of conversation before we go look to shoot anywhere, any city, any place, anytime.
So now it's not just the PA out running to Trader Joe's for Crafty, but you got line producers, and it's at the top of the bill.
I wish I could have recorded the first 30 conversations I had with people about. They had people calling me to handle COVID who honestly didn't know anything about what they were supposed to do. It's a different story today, and that's the only reason why I say I don't believe we're going backwards beyond Monday.
Yeah. So the good news is that, yes, we have to deal with this whole new thing called COVID compliancy, and that's a who knows, going into the billion-dollar business industry here soon. And then my concern is that they're not going to want it to go away because that's a big cash cow right now. But hang on that one, is that we can open up Hollywood and we can start doing more business as unusual?
Come on, man. I there's a top show on a top network. I don't have to name it. They've been shooting since early August, testing 100, 150 people a week. They've had 2 positives in 4.5 months because I know the showrunner, and he's no screwing around. And it's like, you want this to keep, I'm going to get paid whether you work or not. So you either want to show up and keep your life square and clean when you're not on set, or you don't. You don't have a job. And I believe, and that has to come, Clay, from the top shows. It has to come from the places who are in the most danger of getting a liability suit against them, right? So the more that trickles in a way of like, well, those guys do it right, what are they doing? Same as Netflix and the movies. That's gonna transcend every set they have and every single movie they do. And no one's gonna accept any less. And once you have enough percentage of the top money entities, because everybody's fighting for content, right? Everybody's exhausted their accounts. So that's like, okay, so who's going to be first to market after COVID with some new stuff? Like, that's where everybody's at. You really think that a studio or a legitimate place wants to have 5 things in production and have to shut them all down, and now they're another 4 months or 2 months behind a show that's a competitor? Hell no. So again, like everything else, necessity is the mother of invention, and competition drives excellence.
So let's jump into pilot season here. Yeah, pilot seasons, when we were coming up, you had the ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, and the pilot season, end of January, April, boom. I mean, there it is. That was the feeding frenzy.
8 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, and now it's like it's really kind of all the time.
Pilots technically have been year-round for about 11 years, 2009,
right.
2010.
It's been a while.
It's been a while. And again, we came out of the people who are younger, not that I'm talking about the people in the room, whatever, they don't recall as much the first 7-8 years of the 21st century when reality television and talk shows literally took away 28 to 29, 30% of scripted television.
Right, that was a big deal.
And that was a huge phase, and it was a big phase. But then that started to slowly end around 2002, 2008, 2009. And since that time, when we slowly began to evolve from a Netflix standpoint and from a digital technology production standpoint, yes, since then we have gotten more year-round with it, and it is year-round. Did COVID affect that? Absolutely, it affected it. 80, 90% it affected it. But pilots,
in what way?
In just that nobody knew what was going to happen, so they just stopped. I mean, again, just look at Disney, because I've had these conversations. Disney just kept their entire work staff, in terms of admin staff, inclusive of the theme parks, to stay home.
Yeah, I got friends that
stay home.
They're out of work.
But when you just stay home, even if you're working, it's like, well, that's not the same as if we weren't staying home. So just that standpoint affected a good 80%, 90%, obviously, of how the networks especially function. But even the streaming companies had to sort of slow down and adjust. I had 3 or 4 conversations back in August, September, October, where there were productions, a couple of documentaries, Netflix, that were going to go in a particular location, and they started to go down the road of doing it, and then they pulled back and stopped. I saw a lot of that in those months. And a lot of it was because maybe it was somewhat related to the election, but I doubted it was more related to what's going to happen with COVID and what's going to happen with the vaccine. And again, as much as we may want to sit around and think, well, we don't want COVID to go away, COVID will eventually go away. but it isn't going to go away in 2021 when it comes to Hollywood. I bet your house on that.
Well, there's a lot of, nothing personal, but there's a lot of speculation because I don't think any of us really know what's going to happen. We're riding this thing out. We'll know 10 years from now, obviously, more than we know now.
But the idea of what I more mean is the hashtag that I just invented, which is just concern, number 4, COVID. Concern for COVID. The concern for COVID when it comes to any form of a gathering, I don't care how small your commercial set is, the idea that we're going to have to continue to be smart, safe, and test people, that's 2021 all the way through. Don't think it's going to change for a second because it isn't.
I got you. Well, how do you think this pilot season is going to go? What should people be like, actors that are watching, what should they be thinking about or preparing for? Do you think it's going to be somewhat normal as far as the amount of content that's going to be produced? More, less?
Less.
You do think it will be less?
100%. Not 100% less, 100% yes, I believe it'll be less. In 2013, there were 178 pilots-ish. In 2020, there were 120. Now, people watching this would go, ooh, that's a big difference.
Now, these are union pilots.
Correct.
Because we can't measure non-union.
Yeah, I can't ever...
I read something that there was 1,000 pilots last year.
Yeah, because a pilot could be considered you and me in the backyard with a guy named Billy, a goat, and a balloon.
Right.
So
I don't know what we're doing back there.
Listen, it's always a guy named Billy and a goat and a balloon when Kevin's talking. We don't know what's happening back there, but I'm from Tennessee, so there you go. So point being is that Now when we were younger, and when in the 90s, when I was first here, 120 pilots would have been monstrous. That was a normal pilot season. But that's back when we did 362 to 384 studio films. But that's all flipped now.
Oh, of
now
course.
we do 60, 70 studio films, and most of them are franchise films, and there's 420 television shows. So when there's 420-some television shows-ish, and I'm going to sit here and tell you that we had 120 pilots in 2020, and people are like, wow, 2020, that's a lot. I'm like, yeah, but you got to remember, most of those pilots were actually before March 30th. You have to stop and hold on that. I would share with you for technically 2021, there's probably going to be about 100, and they'll probably only pick up about 40. And we always talk about pilots, Coach Clay, and we think about being a series regular. But there are other people who do jobs in pilots besides the top 3 to 5 or 6 on the call sheet. There are guest stars, top show guest stars. There are recurring guest stars. There are co-stars, there are recurring co-stars. There are things that happen on pilots that feed a lot of people besides just the series regulars. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the issues, a lot of where you have shows that are set up, going back 10 years ago, Hawaii Five-0, I did Lost before it became really popular in terms of digital technology and production, but I was in Hawaii. Well, now, 15 years later from when I did Lost, Hawaii is not ever going to stop being a shoot location, aside from the fact that it's Hawaii. Why wouldn't you want to go shoot there? Mm-hmm. And why haven't I done Magnum PI? No, it's okay. Don't worry about it. I will eventually. But Portland, the same thing. I did Leverage in Portland. And now what's happened is so many people have left Los Angeles and moved to Hawaii. So many people have left Los Angeles and moved back to Portland of all kinds, not just actors, crew, camera people. Those locations are not going to stop being hubs for production, and they've been there for so long now, Clay, that they don't have to do a pilot in L.A., which means they don't have to be concerned for the COVID numbers in Los Angeles, and they don't have to travel people from Los Angeles to Portland. So the reality is that production is going to go on. It doesn't have to be a movie, but we're probably going to drop to about 100, and that's a small year, and they're probably only going to pick up 40. And it's because they're just scared, even though they're behind in terms of content.
What's your feeling on production companies going, we're just going to do non-union so we don't have to, we can scathe some of these.
What kind of projects when you say we're just going to stay non-union?
Well, there are big projects and significant shows that do shoot non-union, or they organize non-union and don't necessarily want to do it union.
Do you mean the crew or the cast?
Well, that's what I'm asking you.
Well, if anybody is shooting a non-union production in the state of California and they're using union talent that isn't FICOR, then they're...
No, I'm not talking that. I'm talking legitimate non-union shows.
Oh, but it's never going to stop. We've always had non-union work. It's just a matter of the digital technology, and again, that's a whole different subject in terms of our union and what we do about that. But Digital technology makes it easy to shoot non-union. It just does. And I don't think it'll ever stop. I don't know how much it will go down, but I don't perceive non-union work on any of the platforms or medium necessarily lessening a great deal. But at the same time, they still have to make money. Nobody goes and gets an investor for a non-union project with the desire to lose money. And the truth of the matter is, without certain kinds of talent and without certain things available to you, it still can be a challenge to make money. Yeah, maybe you can go grab an influencer or two and you can pull off something and make some cash on something. Absolutely. But again, Clay, like I would say about anything, if you could dig into the numbers and really do a forensic audit on how all of those things do and what kind of money all of them make collectively in the barrel, I still tell you right now, you're going to be down to about 1-2% that actually are profitable.
Okay, so let's look at this scenario. And I'm just creating the scenario. I know how you can get. I don't want you to get crazy on me.
Oh, I will.
Here it is. I'm gonna do a project.
Already crazy.
No, I'm gonna do a well, wait a second. I'll get you crazy. I'm gonna do a project. All right, and I go, okay, guys, we're going to do this union. I get my producers to get with the union. What's going on? What do we need to do? And they make it impossible for me to actually shoot my show. You know, I have a show right now that I'm trying to sell. Okay, it's called Nancy Mindy. It's about a teenage Mary Poppins. It's very cool. And we looked at that, and we were going to shoot it as a crew union. We were going to go full union, and we started looking at the complications and the money. And this is, me financing this thing. And I'm going, something, I can't do it. We can't afford to do it. So you get these productions that want to go union, but they find out that the COVID is taking their budget and it's shooting it through the roof because with the COVID compliancy, they can't do it the way that the union is saying it needs to be done. And they go, we're just going to do this. We'll be compliant, but not compliant to the union. And we're going to shoot. Can't you see that happening?
Already is.
Yeah.
And also remember that you can shoot a union project with union talent and use a non-union crew. I'm not saying I'm an advocate of it, but it happens all the time.
Right.
It especially happens in right-to-work states.
Yeah.
So that lessens some of it. But yes, having to be required to PCR test, molecular PCR test, which means the test goes to a lab and comes back 3 times every 10 days for Zone A, the people that are around each other and closest knit, versus Zone B, Zone C, and Zone D. Of course, I don't really believe you can pull that off on a set anyway, but that's just me. Invisible lines of a zone. Hey, Billy, you just crossed the line for Zone B.
Yeah, right.
Gee, that's funny. Where the hell was that? I didn't see it. But anyway, I digress. There is no question that there are going to be people who try and do things under the radar, for lack of a better phrase, but the reality is that the whole purpose for the return to work guidelines are, at the end of the day, to keep people safe. And if people want to go around that, then they want to go around that.
Yeah, but there's safe, and then there's bureaucracy, and then there's all this other BS that comes in because people are padding their pockets. You know how that works.
Oh, that I know how that works, even inside of COVID testing.
Yes.
What I have witnessed government-wise, policy-wise, BS friends-wise, just from the FDA standpoint, I have gotten far more inside this than I ever expected to be.
Well, it comes back to the military and the $500 hammer if the government's paying for it.
It's a $3,000 coffee maker, and don't you forget it.
Okay, there you go. There you go.
Yes. Now we have the DOD watching. Awesome. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not debating with you that PCR testing does increase your budget. However, and I'm not talking about a project like yours, of course, anything in that realm budget-wise. But Hollywood has been a fairly wasteful community for, 6 or 7 decades. And the bottom line is there's a lot of things you can tighten up to spend money on making sure your human beings are safe.
Mm-hmm.
There is. There's a lot of transportation. I'm not trying to take a job away from anyone. I'm just saying that the bottom line is if there are more productions that are safe, then there's more opportunity for more individuals to have a job. So as opposed to if you just look at, we can do this with 7 people, but we've just gone along for the last 3 or 4 decades having 10 people on set, then why don't we have 7 people and make sure that everybody's safe and make sure that we all stay working and that we do more projects?
So
that would be part of my philosophy.
What seems to make the most sense is you find the most compliant, applicable, and sustainable, non-ridiculous manner of maintaining COVID compliancy. You put it in place, everybody adheres to it, and then that way everybody stays safe and we can stay in business.
Yeah, it's the same as the country. You and I chatted about it. I mean, I don't disagree with the fact that you can argue to a degree, what the death rate is. But at the same time, if you really want to see COVID go away, why don't you just try being common sense intelligent? I don't care what your politics are, man. Wear a mask and limit your social engagements, period. And we have a better chance of getting rid of this in this country. Same goes for Hollywood. And that's my point to you about what the showrunner said to his crew. When you leave here and you go home for the weekend, I ain't your babysitter. You want a paycheck? Don't be an idiot when we're not watching you. That's kind of a lot of this, Clay, and it's a lot of self-discipline. Listen, man, I miss having female company. Haven't had any for 10 months, and that's how that goes. And I know people that are actually on dating apps, and I want to punch them.
Okay. All right. Let's pull back.
But it's the same thing with Hollywood. It's like you have to be intelligent when you're on set and you have to be intelligent when you're off set. And that would assist. Maybe we can relax some of the guidelines that will make it easier on a smaller producer like yourself to produce something, because I agree with you. Right now, when you file a production application and you look at what the requirements are by the return to work document, it bumps your budget up a good 25%, no question.
Yeah. And
right.
We can't see all these little stories that take place. Where you can see it is in Major League Sports, like the NFL. We know when guys are off on the weekend in between bye weeks and they're out there getting in trouble because they can't play the game.
That's correct.
And they make the news, and it becomes a big deal, and their team takes the hit. So, yes, that's humanism, I think, right there. Let's shift gears for a second.
Yes, sir.
And talk about something I know you're impassioned. This is kind of like I'm just going to give you this, but I think it's good for people to know. And I know, and listen, I'm going to ask this question with a little bit of a disclaimer that this is coming from Kevin, okay? And just here we go. Here we go.
Seems dangerous already.
Here we
What is
go.
he setting me up for?
2 words: FICOR.
Yeah.
Look at him. Look at his face. See what I'm saying? Okay, look. So you're a union delegate. You're a union guy. I'm a union guy. Now, I'm a union guy because I support the union. I'm a union member and la. But you are a union delegate. So FICOR, and we've had this conversation, but I want you to address this to the actors out there that don't really know and don't know what they're doing if they do elect to go FICOR. So can you just explain what FICOR is, going back to the right to work state and the whole thing with the labor laws, real quickly, bringing that up to the union, and then why actors should or should not deal with FICOR?
I will legitimately, Clay, try to do it as succinctly as I possibly can. Just
in 300 seconds.
Yeah, in 300 seconds. So first and foremost, number one, understand that FICOR is not something that SAG-AFTRA invented. This is imperative you understand this. This is a Supreme Court decision that's related to employees and unions. This is a Supreme Court thing. It's not the SAG. And here's number two to that. I also want you to understand that most unions in this country the unions have a singular expertise or a singular job and employer, meaning like someone who works in the textile industry or someone who works on an auto industry line building cars. You have to understand that one of the problems is that SAG-AFTRA, we have multiple employers. FICOR was never put down by the Supreme Court to be a form of members themselves sort of taking part in busting their own union. That was not the intent. However, now I'm going to say the two things that
hang on. We're talking to people that don't really know a
Sure.
lot about what even financial core is.
I had to give the background on what the actual legal status is and then apply it to actors. Okay? So if you're an actor, you have the option to walk into the union and to file to become financial core, which means that you're a dues-paying non-member. You don't have the right to vote, etc. What it gives you the latitude to do in a closed state like California, as opposed to a right-to-work state like Georgia, is it allows you to also do non-union work and not lose your membership card. Now, there's a wrinkle inside of that Clay would like me to make sure I tell you. When you apply for FICOR status, you're going to try and get talked out of it by the union because we don't want you to be FICOR. It's a form of going against your own union members. But you're going to go through that speech, and if you choose to do it, you literally turn your card in, your membership card in, And this is the key that a lot of people don't know. I'm not trying to scare anybody. It's just a fact, is that technically the union never asks to allow you back into the union again. You can apply for status again, but they're not required to. It goes to a review board, blah, blah, blah. So once you go FICOR and you give yourself the opportunity to do non-union work inside of a closed state, which is what California is, the union doesn't technically ever have to allow you back in. That's just a sidebar for you to know. Now comes the final point in the real conversation, is the reasoning behind someone choosing to be FICOR. And what I commonly hear, Clay, is one of three things. It's a Janet Jackson song, as it applies to our union. Well, what have you done for me
Jimmy
lately?
Buffett and Janet, we're rolling.
I don't play, bro. I go Kiss. I cover all the
All right,
John Denver.
Let's get to it.
So you have the situation where you have a lot of actors who go, well, what has my union done for me, number one? And then you have a lot of people who say, yeah, man, but, I got to work. Well, I'm going to split that one into two things, and I'm going to ask everybody looking at this. Did you actually get into this business because you were believed as an actor you were guaranteed a job? None of us were ever guaranteed a job in this business. I've been out of work since March. That's life. That's what being in this business is if you're doing it for money. And so I've never tried to talk anybody out of being FICOR in my life. I have simply reminded them that you chose this business, and then you chose to join the union. And when you choose to go FICOR, you are crossing the line against the very people in the very industry that would help you have a pension and a health plan and a retirement.
Do you lose all that on FICOR? Let's say you've been working for years and you go FICOR. No, you don't lose it.
No, you won't lose it.
You're still paying dues as FICOR.
Yeah, you're a dues-paying non-member. That's literally the phrase.
But you're paying the bottom line dues. The 100,
but that
whatever
doesn't have
a year.
anything to do with the pension or anything. You're just paying dues.
Right.
But you can't vote. You're technically not a member. They take your card away from you. But my thing has always been much more just the principle of it. This used to be a joke of mine in the Actors Network.
It's like the next step from scabbing.
Well, no, actually, you are scabbing.
You are scabbing.
Technically, you are. Technically. Now, working off the card is worse. I will tell you and anybody who listens to this that if you're actually...
we are streaming this.
Yeah, if you're a full-on card-carrying member and you actually do non-union work without being FICOR, you are worse than a FICOR person.
Wait. Whoa. Say that again.
If you walk OTC off the card.
Yeah.
If you're a full union member and you lie and go do non-union work,
got it.
You are worse than being a FICOR person.
Right, you're scabbing.
Correct. You're OTC, off the card. So we will always hold you in less regard than that, and that includes discipline and a fine and a thing, and you can lose your membership status for life. So you have all of that. But you started today off a little bit about why I started the Actors Network. And this doesn't apply to everybody watching this because you could be in state of Louisiana, which I love me some New Orleans and Baton Rouge. You could be in Michigan. You could be in San Francisco. You could be in Dallas, Texas. You could be anywhere. But the reality is that I didn't get into this business to sit in the stands, and I didn't get in this business to sit on the bench. And if you actually want to work and do real work and make real money in this profession, that is union work. And that is the end of that story. So I'll never tell somebody what they have to do to run their household, but somebody who's never been a star or never achieved a certain status in this profession telling me the reason they went FICOR is because they need the money. Man, I sold Firestone coupons door to door. I worked in the restaurant business for 14 years. I've worked at a law firm. We all have done things. That's a part of what it is pursuing this. And whether it's COVID or whether it's digital technology that makes it tough, to me, that's life. It has nothing to do with standing with or standing without your union brothers and sisters.
Okay, so let me challenge you on this, and
yes,
if I know you'll probably
just I knew you would.
You'll flick it right off your shoulders. But let's just for the sake of conversation, if you were going to argue the other side, why would an actor go FICOR?
I appreciate the question because it actually allows me to say the reason why I really believe people go FICOR, which doesn't have anything to do with the money. Because, Clay, let's pretend you're 25 years old.
Oh, that's nice.
Yes, nice. He had less silver right in this area here.
There's a lot of less, more of other stuff.
We get excited about, I booked a job. Does that have anything to do with money? No, that's your ego.
Oh, it's not just ego. It's exciting.
I know. Yeah, well, because we all like to be chosen.
Of
This is
course.
Sally Field at the Oscars. You like me. You really like me. I'm not
really
kidding.
like
That's
me.
for real. I mean that for real, bro. I'm being sincere when I say that. You do something, they pay you $5,000. Oh my God, $5,000, 25 years old. Ah! And then 30 years later, when you have kids, there's your mug still getting used. They're making money off you for $5,000 that was gone 2 weeks later. That's my point. What we miss in the short term that is
But
short-sighted.
we're still going pro FICOR in this answer.
No, I'm just telling you that the concept of doing non-union work is never going to pay your bills for real, because you don't get the one thing that we have to have, which is residuals.
I don't think you answered the question.
I believe more people go FICOR because they just want the ego thing of being able to say, I booked a job. That's why.
There's the answer.
There's the answer.
Okay, all right, we got.
That's why I started out with 25
Okay.
and being young, and you got all excited. Went, oh, I'm 25.
You set me back, baby. I had all kinds of things going on.
I also set you up. That's
Okay.
exactly correct.
All right. On this topic, before we switch, and you're doing great. This is awesome, but we only have 10 more minutes. Voluntary suspension.
Okay.
Voluntary suspension. I respect my union. I enjoy what I do. I can't do anything right now. Something's going on in my life. I need to get away from it because I don't want to pay the additional money when it's not really serving me. This might be for a year, maybe it's a couple years, but then when everything's squared away, I'm ready to go back in.
Honorable withdrawal.
Honorable withdrawal.
Sure.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Happens all the time.
Just want to make sure it's okay with the K-man.
Yeah. Let's remove voluntary suspension and call it honorable withdrawal.
Thank you. Honorable withdrawal.
Yes.
Isn't that what happens like when you're drinking too much and you say, "There's
That
my
plus,
keys"?
Yeah. It's between drinking and also honorable mention, which is you were too drunk to finish inside the top six.
all right,
So
there
we
you
gave
go.
you an honorable mention trophy.
Okay. So moving forward into like more of the behind the curtain thing. You're a union delegate. What's going on with SAG-AFTRA right now?
Can you lessen the broadness of that for me a little
No,
bit? Because
I
am
want you to
talking about
work
the
through
paid
that.
staff, the elected leadership? Are we talking about contracts?
All right, how about this? There's a union, there's a president, there's people, there's you. Fill in the blanks. Well, where are you in that equation, and what's happening?
Well, I'm merely a union delegate out of Los Angeles. There are delegates all across the country in various cities. We also have local boards members, of which I am not one, and then we have a national board. And what everyone mostly watching this, if you're not real familiar with it, because we'd be here all day if I really got down and dirty with it, the reality is what we need to understand as union members is the president and the elected leadership are volunteers. No one is paid to be the president, Gabriel Carteris. No one is paid
At time of taping.
to be at time of taping. No one is paid to be an elected person. The people who are paid at the union, that our dues pay, are the leadership that is what we call staff. And the top staff person is a national executive director, and that would be David White. So those two people, essentially, if you look top to bottom, you always have to split a line down the middle between paid staff and elected leadership.
Now, are they voted in or are they hired?
The elected leadership, the reason I'm using elected is because they are voted in.
Okay.
The elected leadership does the hiring and firing. So the national board has the ability to hire or fire David White, very simply. By the way, David, if you happen to be watching this, I'm just using this because that's the proper example.
Where's the power? Who's in charge? A board?
Technically, the power of the union is the national board. That is correct. Technically.
Where are they?
All over. There's a percentage that's in New York, there's a percentage here, and there are national board members scattered from other locals from Atlanta to Dallas and other such places that make up the entire national board. But most of them are New York and Los
And they're
Angeles.
voted in.
That is correct. In the election that will be coming up this summer, 2021.
And you're a delegate, and there are delegates all over the country. Just all the U.S.? Is this in other parts of the world, or is it just the United States?
Just the United States.
Now, when people are acting in other countries, because I get this question a lot because, I mean, I deal with actors all over the world, and this question comes up, and I'd like to just get some clarity for myself. When actors are working in Europe, wherever, they don't have to be in the union, but what if a union job is shooting in their country?
No, an actor doesn't have to be in the union, but if you are in the union, we live our lives by global rule one, which is you don't do non-union work in another country. You do.
No, a union project.
Right.
Quentin Tarantino's shooting Inglourious Bastards. Okay.
Correct.
And he hires a lot of local talent.
Right.
Do they have to be union to work on that project?
No.
They don't, because they're not Americans.
Right.
Because they're not.
Well, they're not union. They're indigenous to that country.
And they can hire them onto a union project, being non-union.
Yep.
Because they're foreign, or they're from another country.
Yeah. Because they're
So the SAG-AFTRA union really is an American union.
Yeah, that's a British Equity is a union. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Now, we have a lot of handshake with Britain and Canada and ACTRA, but ACTRA has its own guidelines. You know, the Canadian union, in a lot of ways is harder about us coming up there and working than we are and them coming down here and working.
Now, but the British actors have to be in the union to do American movies.
Well, it applies to them in terms of working on a signatory. You have to use the word signatory. Is your production emanating from the United States of America as a union signatory production? And then
Cate Blanchett. Does she have to be in the union? She probably is.
She's long since in the union.
But did she have to be in the union?
She became a must join. First time she did a job here, if she comes back here and does another one, it's the same thing. Yeah. If she keeps coming here to work, yeah, she has to join the union.
So what's the qualification for a foreign established actor?
You get one.
To have to you get one, then you have to join.
Yeah, it's the Taft-Hartley concept.
It's Taft-Hartley.
Which again is a court thing, not a SAG-AFTRA thing.
Okay, I think we had a question. Can I see that question again? Okay, we answered it while it was questioned.
Who knew?
Hey, we got it. We're doing good. Okay, so how about now? What's happening with our union now under the state of COVID? What's going on?
Sadly for us, a massive amount of our work staff was furloughed and then officially let go. That's just a matter of money. And it's also a matter of when work slowed down naturally from March, April, May, and certainly even into June, because the contract deadline ended on June 30th. Our previous theatrical contract sunset on June 30th. So when we ratified the new contract in July, of course, what you saw come right behind that was this massive overhaul of our healthcare plan, which was really a kick in the groin to metaphorically to all of us, especially those of a certain age, in which they drastically changed the health plan due to trying to sustain it and keep it healthy from all the money it had lost in the last several years, plus the massive amount it was going to lose based on COVID, because the health plan remains funded by the percentage from the employers, the producers, who pay a certain percentage, 18.5, 19% on every single contract and paycheck that occurs. So when no one's working, then we don't have any contributions, yet of course while we're not working, people are still going to the hospital. So the healthcare plan, which is a really long, drawn-out, gross conversation about where we are today, that got massively overhauled. All of this was in the vein of trying to save and protect resources financially of the union. We still have obviously a functioning staff nationwide from paid staff, and we obviously have all of our elected leadership is intact because we're all volunteers. We have national board meetings. We have local board meetings on Zoom.
But it's all Zoom, because I was over there just last week, and it's like a ghost town.
It is a ghost town. I haven't stepped foot in the union since the week. My birthday was March 5th. That was a Thursday. That would have been the last time I stepped foot in the union, and I was over there constantly because I'm the co-chair of the LA Organizing Committee. I'm the vice chair of the LA Conservatory. So
I got it. I want to do something unprecedented. It seems to be the word of 2020, by the way. Did you ever notice that? Unprecedented.
Yeah, everything was unprecedented.
If you look it up on Google, the most looked up word, unprecedented. What I'm going to do is I'm going to close out this show because we're out of time.
Yes, sir.
And then I'm going to open the show back up just for a swap spit. I just want to just shoot some stuff back and forth, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure.
Okay, so we're going to close this episode out. If you guys want, we will close this out. You can, we'll leave it. We'll have it come back again, so you can stay if you'd like. And then we're going to do kind of an unplugged for 15 minutes.
Okay,
if you're
sure.
cool with that. You good with that? Yeah. Okay, so guys, and I'll ask this question now just to get it out of the way, because this is the question I ask all my guests at the end of every episode. And I have asked you this question before, but new things have happened. You had a birthday, another one, another trip around the sun, Kevin, since we did this. And the question that I like to ask, and keeping in mind that we're answering this in this pandemic, you get to send out an IG post. And this magical IG post will go to every single account holder, and every phone owner on the planet will see your post the minute you hit send. What picture do you send, and what does the caption say?
The pictures of the Grand Canyon, and it says, "Do what makes you happy. You ain't going to be here that long."
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kevin E. West. Kevin, it's been great as always.
Thanks, man.
So mentally stimulating. Thank you so much for sharing your
pleasure.
expertise, your wisdom, your life experience. When people want to find out a little bit more about you, how do they go about doing that?
My Twitter and IG is at the Kevin E. I'm easy to find. There's a closed Facebook group page for the Actors Network. You can request to join if you wanted to be a part of that. But I'm Kevin at kevinewest.com and actors-network.com.
And people can reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm pretty easy to find.
Okay, fantastic. Great. Thanks again, Kevin. Appreciate
pleasure,
that. Again, guys, want to thank you for tuning in to PZTV. Coach Clay Banks here, bringing you the best of the best from the West and wherever else they tend to trickle in. So until we see you again, guys, just God bless and be safe out there. Okay, everybody, and we are back with an amended segment of PZTV with Mr. Kevin E. West, veteran film and television actor and author and SAG-AFTRA delegate and COVID specialist. I mean, this guy, watch out. Bam, it's coming down. All right, Kevin, the reason I want to do these extra 15 minutes is because we need it. How was that for you?
It was outstanding.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What did you really want to say?
About all of it? What I really want to say about all of it?
I know. What did you just want to say that you didn't say because it was all official and stuff? Now that we're unplugged.
No, I mean, I think the one thing, Clay, you've been in this city a long time. I've been in this city a long time. I've been around this business a long time. And I recently said this to a set of people that I was talking to on a Zoom. I've pretty much done every single thing in this business that I would have said I wanted to come out from rural Tennessee and do, except, quote unquote, for lack of a better phrase, make it into the top 2%, which means whether you want to say that's celebrity or star, for me, it really is just about credits and what you get paid for your profession. That would be, and I mean that actually fully. I've experienced some of the worst things about Hollywood personally, and I have had the opportunity to work with Andy Griffith and Dick Van Dyke. I mean, and as a kid who never expected to be sitting in this chair or anywhere else, that's pretty cool. And I think that I never, ever want to step on anyone's dreams, and I never try to do that because I had my own and have my own. But there's a difference between having dreams. As they like to say, a goal is just a dream with a deadline. You have to at least give some of what this profession is the due of it being a profession and not just a dream.
Yeah, that's great.
Because if you actually really do wind up working a lot, please note the first 4 letters in that word. It's called work. And we get caught up in seeing the award shows and we get caught up in seeing people driving around in fancy cars and somebody doing this or some social media or some bullshit. And what we forget is, and it's a line in the movie Bull Durham about Kevin Costner playing baseball, it's still a job. And we tend to think sometimes that when you're making a bunch of money and everybody knows your name, not necessarily the theme song from Cheers, that everything's always Pollyanna, as if somehow you wouldn't be in the middle of a week where you have 7 scenes tomorrow and you have 12, 14 pages to memorize and your mom dies. And you get that phone call in the middle of the day. Still a job. You still have to do your job. And that's the part. Not that you have to learn, but I wish somebody like me, who was an athlete and a college athlete and a good one, it makes it much easier to see the tactability of that. Is that even a word?
It is now.
It is now. Maybe it's a hashtag or a sniglet, but it's a word now. That it's still a job, not just doing the work as an actor, but the whole concept of working is work. And that, I think, from high school to university to an even just post 22, 23, depending on the country, depending on your household, your parents, how you grew up, I think a lot of that gets lost. And I'm be really straight up with you, Coach Clay. It is one of the reasons why I think a lot of people actually get fortunate enough to work. They actually ding that bell. They actually check that box and they don't last. Because the second they got that job, whatever that job was, they woke up one day and went, I got to go to work. It's 5:15 in the morning. Yes, you do. 7 days in a row. Deal with it. See your paycheck? That's called work. Show up. And it's harder for people than they think.
So that was wonderful.
So that's some of what I would have said.
Let's and you can correct me where I might be off here, and thank you for that. But the statistics somewhere around, there's 160, 63, 65,000 SAG-AFTRA card-carrying members to date.
You're correct.
Less than 3% make over $5,000 a year. That statistic has been around since the 70s.
That's correct, and an important distinction, too. It hasn't changed.
It hasn't changed. That statistic hasn't changed. Now, there's celebrity starism, there's no work, and then there's these working actors in between. Now, you and I were both fortunate enough. I had an 18-year working acting career. I didn't become a star. I have had my bouts where people are like, hey, I know you when I was on a series regular. You know, you get that. That's fun, and that's cool. But we got a piece of the pie.
Oh, yeah.
We did it. Why did we do it? And so many people don't get that far. Work? I think it's work. I'm right there with you.
Ethic. Work. Ethic.
Explain.
After you peel yourself off of the ceiling from the first time that you book a job that matters to you, because I had to peel myself off the ceiling, and then you get the next one, and then you get the next one, and then you get the next one. When it doesn't go from job one to I'm at the Oscars, the place in between is called work. And the only way you're going to accomplish continuing doing good enough work to have somebody want to have you around again is work ethic. And that isn't just your art. It's actually called getting up, being prepared, showing up on time. One of my biggest problems with people in Los Angeles is punctuality. Being prepared. I mean, Mark Wahlberg said it once on some late night talk show. He goes, I don't even understand anybody who shows up on set and doesn't know their lines. What the hell am I paying you for? You may or may not like Mark Wahlberg, but he's right. You have one job. You can't do that every day. You're not going to be around. And that's going back 3 decades for me, right? Clay, they were a lot more forgiving back then. They're not so forgiving anymore. Whether you want to call that politics, the climate, or just simply the fact, what I call it, which is when I was a kid, it took 7 years for Star Wars to wind up on our television. And now the Oscar-nominated film is on your plane 3 months after the Oscars because there's too much distribution competition globally, and there's too much competition in general because of digital technology. You don't get that kind of slack anymore. Maybe 0.001% of stars do, and that's it.
Let me address this. I found this really fascinating. Over the years, we've conducted numerous casting director workshops, and like you, I've sat down and interviewed and talked with so many
Sure.
casting directors over the years. And something that they say, actually quite frequently, and they complain about is, we set these actors up for these auditions and they don't come in for their auditions. They just don't show.
Yeah, no show.
Agents and managers have the same problem with this actors being that way. And it's like, and I know a lot of actors, like the ones in the room here, they would be like, why would I ever do that? I mean, these guys aren't that way, but so many people are. They're just so bad about that.
Do you know, Clay, that early in the Actors Network, and for those who don't know, it was a business organization, but it started out as a conversation. So one of the things that we did, and you know this well, that was part of our curriculum, we never used the word class. I never called myself a teacher. We never called it a school, and we didn't use the word seminar. We had topical discussions. Do you know what one of my favorite topical discussions I invented was? When it rains. I used to tell people, especially people from New York who grew up in a different culture of sort of walking around into offices, as I would call it, a drop-off or walking by. I said, yeah, do it on a rainy day. Because 35 to 45% of the auditions they have that day won't show up because it's raining in Los Angeles and I'm melting. And I was right. Because I don't say shit that's funny or that's even not funny because I don't think it's right. Because people wouldn't show up. Absolutely. Boggles the mind. Again, some of this is cultural, some of this is your parents, some of the, and it's not just age. We always try to talk about, well, Clay, you and I come from a different era than the young folks sitting in the room. It doesn't matter. You're going to try and tell me that you can't find people in this country that are 22 or 21 or 19 that don't have good work ethic? Sure we can. And we can find them outside of the military and professional sports or college sports. It's how you are raised or who you choose to be. And the bottom line is, I show up. Period. It doesn't matter if it's for a weekly golf game or if it's for an audition. My friend Chris Gorham, who's 7 series, after he was on like his 6th series and he left the Actors Network, of course, and whatever, we'd have him come back in and speak. And one of the comments that he used to make about at his level, going to audition for another series, I've already had 5 and I'm going to have another one. And he would show up at the audition and then people would be sitting in the room and they would be sitting around yammering with each other, chatting. And Chris is the nicest guy on the planet, like mellow, chill. You might expect me to say this, but you wouldn't expect him to say it. And the bottom line is that he would think to himself, what are you here for? Because I'm here to get a job. I'm not here to socialize with you. That's work ethic.
Awesome. Great. I agree with you 1,000%. Question just came in. It's a good question. So let's wrap this segment up with that, and then I have another little extra thing.
Wow.
I know.
It's like extra square.
You're here, and I need to get the Kevin E. A question came in about pilot season, and is it a good time to look for representation or not? What's a good time to look for getting new representation? I generally tell people, once pilot season hits, these agents are not interviewing you. What's your feeling about that?
Well, as it is in my book, no one tends to like my answer to this question because it's my constant dating metaphor. What's a good time to find a husband or wife or a boyfriend or girlfriend? You don't know because you don't know who your audience is looking for at the moment that you have that thought. So my answer is there's never a good time and there's always a good time, and no one likes that answer. I would much more say it's how you go about doing it, which is a Kevin E. thing of, I think that we in general pursue the business with too broad a stroke all the time. It's an old metaphor from the South because I'm a Southern boy. If you shoot with a rifle instead of a shotgun, it's not about shooting. It's about how much spray you're trying to attack with one thought. I don't think there's ever a wrong time to try and find somebody who might want you. I think there's an intelligent, emotional, and psychological time to understand that pilot season might have the percentages be lower. So be careful about how much you expect from something that's 100% subjective based on timing, mood, and what the hell's going on right now. We've all had moments in time in our life when we knew somebody was attracted to us or we were attracted to them, but one of us was taken, and then the next time we saw them again, I was taken, and they weren't. Holy crap, I'm never going to get to date this person. That's a lot of what representation rosters look like. Because the truth of the matter is, no matter how unique you are as a person, they still do things by generic physical type in terms of certain amounts of taking somebody on or not taking somebody on. If you're not an obvious known entity and you come with guaranteed money, and since most people don't come with guaranteed money, if I already have 6 of Kevins, I may love Kevin, but I don't need another Kevin right now. That's why I've always been of the belief, and I've been preaching for come May 1st, 3 decades, since 5/1/91, that you should be always looking to get representation meetings, not getting representation.
Okay, fair enough. But would you not say that now, okay, in a time of taping here, mid-January, going through February, March, and into April, that they're prone to not going to open envelopes and take unsolicited calls for a meeting as they would when they're not so busy?
They're not as reticent. I mean, they're more reticent to it for sure. I mean, yeah, it's a lesser percentage, absolutely, but it's also one of the reasons why Kevin would tell you, make sure you have some decent material on you actually acting that actually is professionally well done. It doesn't have to be 5 minutes. It just needs to be 90 seconds. I would spend more time trying to get if I didn't have any credits. Kevin would spend more time trying to get a co-star role, this is going way back machine, not today, or a one-day guest on an actual pilot than I would be trying to get a representative.
Right, of
because
course.
if I get a co-star role or a one-day guest star on an actual pilot, guess who's going to see it? Everybody. You want to know why? Because every single person at every single network at every single place watches everybody else's pilots. That's why. And then you use that job as a tool to get a representative.
Right. Okay. So here's this. You just opened up one more thing. What is the best way to go about getting representation?
Well, the best way is always, if you haven't met the person, a referral. It's always the best way. The second best way is actually meeting somebody in person who can actually, and no one likes to hear those two things. Well, I don't have anybody to refer me. Well, I don't know how to go about meeting
So then
people.
what do you do? What's the next one?
Well, Kevin has always been the guy who does what everybody else doesn't do, because I've never been an advocate. I wasn't an advocate of sending 8x10s in back in the era when you sent 8x10s in. I wasn't an advocate.
Black and white.
I wasn't an advocate of sending postcards in because you can just see them coming. So I've always been somebody who was an advocate of using what I call odd-size mailers that go in basically a thank you size card, because if it's handwritten, it looks like something that's personal, and it has a better chance of, my 3 favorite words, enhance the likelihood of it actually getting to the person you're sending it to and them actually opening it, see your face. So I've always been that way. I'm also an advocate of walking into offices, even though you'll have people go, oh, don't ever do that. There's a reason why people in this business don't want actors to walk in offices, because actors are commonly inappropriate when they walk into offices, and that's why. You're not an invited guest, but you stand there like a sad puppy expecting to be an invited guest, and you shouldn't. You should walk in, drop your stuff on the table, and walk out. 7 seconds. If actors all did that, they wouldn't have the attitude about drop-offs. So my thing is, Clay, it's never about 100%, 0%. It's always about circumstance, environment, scenario, intent, and preparation. All of the above. But there is a cliche that exists for a reason, because it's true. Successful people do all the things unsuccessful people don't want to do. And one of the things actors don't want to do, and I mean this with absolute respect, not everybody, just a high percentage, they don't actually want to work at having to get a representative.
Right. Okay, excellent. And I can't thank you enough for your wisdom share. 5 things right now, actors watching at any point in time that this is being viewed, in this pilot season, this COVID pilot season, in your opinion, what are 5 things that an actor should be, could be doing to take them from where they are to the next step? I know it's a little broad, but just
it's 5
tips, if you will.
Number
Okay, 10.
That doesn't help.
Oh, okay.
That was where we were supposed to go the other direction.
Okay, I wasn't sure where you wanted to go with that.
The other direction. First thing I would say about pilot season is understand that pilots are much more about the organizing body and the executive producer. Ongoing shows are much more about the showrunner and the rest of the production team. So you want to look at the head of development at studios and networks, and you want to look at the executive producers of pilots, number one.
What about the writers?
As a target. Yeah, again, it depends. But the writers The writers in a pilot, if they're writer EP, if they actually are developing it, like a David R. Kelly or something like that, then yes, but he's the EP. So that's what I mean by the EP. If it's just a staff writer, no.
Not a staff writer, no, but the writers that actually created the shows, writer/showrunners.
Yes, but usually the writer of a pilot is actually the executive producer. So executive producer is number one. Number two, again, a word we don't like because it's work, which is research. And you and I could make jokes all day long about how hard research was back in the late 80s and the 90s.
How easy
and how easy
now.
it is today.
Gosh, it's
and
crazy.
yet we still don't do it.
IMDb Pro. Oh, there it is. Answer. We used to have to go like. Do you remember when if you wanted your copy from a TV
I had to
show,
line my way onto the lot.
you had a there was a film bank and you had to call to get your show. Do you remember that? And then pay $7 to get your scene.
Yes, we had pagers too, and you had to pull over and find a payphone. But anyway. I digress.
Hey, I just thought it'd be good for the kids to see.
I know
the
it's
old man
absolutely.
talking,
we had to find a payphone. It was like you were constantly doing a drug deal in the corner. Like where do I find a payphone? I got my pager went off. Crap. It's like you had to do that. So identifying executive producers and also doing research would be two of the key things to that. The other thing would be you should have already identified, and if you pay attention to this, rather than looking at the shows today. Look at the shows that you really feel you belong on as a product for the last 2 years, and look at who created those shows. Because there's a really good chance they have a 2 or 3 year deal with the studio or the network, and they probably might likely have a pilot coming in this time. Not guaranteed, but very likely. So you can already front end who you might want to be able to target and go after just based on what's happened the last 2 years of television, for lack of a better phrase. That is another way to go about it. And if you want to go down to the casting level of things, again, you're going to have these days, that's why I used to make jokes that digital technology made it harder on actors in some ways, not easier. And one of the reasons why is because, and especially now in COVID, we don't know where anybody's office is and nobody's in their office. So we have a firewall between us based on digital technology that makes some of the stuff Kevin used to be really good at and actually help people being good at. Not only you can't not be good at it, it doesn't exist because no one's in their office.
And then the complexity of the algorithm path.
Right. So one of the things that I constantly share with people is you need to do reverse social media because we're always, and I understand it, I'm not really giving you as much of a hard time as it may sound, but reverse social media is, why don't you spend time actually paying attention to and following people you'd one day like to audition you instead of worrying about who's following you? So no one should have to follow me. You can. I say some funny stuff. But my point being is that we don't spend time paying attention to what you and I would have commonly just called someone's bio and history. And yet we live in a business where even pre-COVID, and even at some point as we begin to slowly open up with COVID, there's other industries like the NFL, like the NBA, like Wall Street. You'll never run into certain people accidentally in those industries. And yet in Los Angeles, California, in New York, in Sydney, in Melbourne, in London, in all of these places, you could literally be standing in line for coffee, and the person in front of you could actually be a network executive that you could actually want to meet. Like that can happen in this industry, and it happens in Los Angeles all the time. I apologize to all the British folks.
That's actually pretty good.
So that's again proximity and access. We are constantly waiting for Godot. We constantly believe we don't have a right to actually just chat with somebody for 90 seconds. The problem is we don't think 90 seconds is enough, and it is.
And that's where your elevator pitch comes in, people. Okay, I think you nailed 3 and 4. Last one, 5th one. You got one more for the kind people watching at home.
Go after pilots that are not based on who's cast or based on who's doing it that aren't in the top 10. Go after pilots that are by lesser than executive producers and lesser than showrunners. What I mean by lesser than is not as accredited, that have a star in them, but they only have 1 star out of the 4 on the call sheet or the 5 on the call sheet. You're not going up against one that has 5 Emmy and Oscar winners on it. Seek out and go after the bottom 25% in terms of initial and obvious credibility, because those are easier to have a shot at because there's less risk, less paranoia, and less expectation on the line from the studios and networks.
And everybody's kind of in the same boat. Everybody's trying to get a job on those pilots.
That's correct.
Yeah, so everybody's working together.
We know crawl before we walk. We just don't like doing it.
Kevin, awesome. I got you 10 extra minutes than I had asked for, so I appreciate that. Thank you again. Guys, this was an extra segment of PZTV, and I want to thank you. These segments and the show is being sponsored by the ACT course, the Art, Craft, and Technicalities of On-Camera Acting. So if you would like professional level training and you're in a community somewhere where you don't have access to it, you can get the best that there is at the ACT course. Just go to cbsiact.com and you can find out all about it. Guys, thanks, Coach Banks, again. And PZTV coming at you with the best of the best from the West, unless you're coming from somewhere else. Until then, be safe. God bless.